Hello everybody and welcome to Planetary Astrology. My name's Sam Dudgeon. I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine and astrology, and today we're here to talk about Carl Jung's Chinese astrological chart, Barter and planetary astrology. And I just wanted to make an announcement to everyone. Thanks for jumping in on my live the other week. There's a few people who left their chart details, which I will cover. Excuse me. I will cover. I'm going to do a live this Friday coming up on Valentine's Day the 14th, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And I'll promise I'll cover those charts for people who missed out. And then also, if there's anyone else who wants to jump on, because it's Valentine's Day, we can talk romance, flowers, peach blossom, stars, and how that relates in Chinese astro. Now, we're going to look at Jung's chart, because personally, one of the things that's great about, astrology is we can dig in and we can find out certain characteristics about ourselves. Obviously, it's one of the bonuses, but I really got inspired to do this actually from listening to a podcast, which I'm a member of, called the Unslaved podcast, and these guys did a great take on Carl Jung. I think there's about 6 episodes on this, on his work, on his book called The Undiscovered Self, which I personally think is one of his favorites, alongside with Memoirs, Dreams and Reflections. And obviously a lot of his work is just phenomenal, and there's a few light bulb moments, and I think anyone who's had a rich inner life can really relate to a lot of his work, and I think it's really monumental. And being a Chinese medical practitioner over the years, as you understand that Chinese medicine is really just psychology, and especially when you look at the organs and organ functions and how each organ's related to a soul, and reading the pulse, obviously you're reading someone's psyche, right? And I think there's a classic saying in Taoism that is, which I'm going to do a podcast on, I just want to collaborate with someone to do this, as there's a classic saying, all disease is rooted in the spirit, right? So when it comes down to diagnosis and looking into, okay, if all disease is rooted in the spirit, which I personally think it is, then we need to find divination tools, right? Or guides or maps that can take us into that kind of terrain. And I think astrology is the number one, probably alongside with the tarot and, numerology, Kabbalah, but I think astrology is one of the best. I mean, all these subjects are absolutely monumental to understand. So, it takes quite a bit of time to get your head around it. Like I say, I mean, I've done a few chart readings for quite a number of years now, but I, excuse me, I always feel like a beginner. And I think it's always a humbling experience, trying to express and how to connect astrology into the layman terms so they can actually really understand it. But after listening to this podcast, and I love psychology because of this, and there's a lot of great psychologists that are never mentioned, and I'm amazed actually the amount of people, because I've got a few patients who are psychologists who've studied this younger generation who've actually never heard of Carl Jung, which I just found absolutely mind-blowing. And I think, wow, this is the next kind of generation coming through who really don't study these great masters at university. So this is interesting. But I think his astrology chart is fascinating to me, and particularly his Barter, which is, Barter is like what they call the 4 pillars of destiny. So we've got the year, the month, the day, and the hour. And the pivotal point of the chart is the day pillar here, yin. So his old chart, how are we going to determine what element is? This is what they call the 5 aspects of life. It's a little bit deeper to explain that kind of stuff here, but I just want to give people a flavor for this kind of stuff. So, I talk about that in my book and my course online for people who are kind of doing that. So, but the 5 elements is really what it's based on, and the 12 animal branches that which run along here. So Jung's born in year of the pig, the yin wood pig. He's got a yin water goat, a yin earth ox, and a yang wood dog, right? So there's a partial wood element combination the first half of his life. So the year and the months up to 30, 30 years. But when in Chinese astrology, realistically, you know, I mean, they say 60 is a significant age, but obviously we live longer now. So the first half of his life, he'll be using these. And so earth to wood element to earth element, his power element. So he follows power for the first half of his life, which maybe, you know, seeming like a Leo sun, they like to stand out, right? They want to be able to stand out in the crowd, be able to be seen. And wood's very visionary, right? So they like to, you know, set goals, hit them, create them, and try and get where they need to go in life. They like to see tangible things, tangible results. It's a very kind of Jupiterian energy, Sagittarian energy, which he's got on his midheaven here. 1 degree, it's an Aryan degree, so he'll want to get to where he'll be feeling like he'll want to get his ass into gear and get where he needs to go. Obviously, I'm using a whole signs chart here just so people know. And then, excuse me, and then, so, okay, first half of his life is using this. Second half, right, he becomes dominant earth. Why? There's a rule in Chinese astrology, right? When there's no combinations coming in the last half of his life and there's a lot of earth element, then you use earth. Why? Because earth is where we all are and we're centered. So the dog, the ox, and the goat. So he becomes dominant earth, so he's a very strong individual. Born on a self-made pillar day, so he will make it on his own and have the will to do that. Also, he's born on one of these 6 intelligent days. Yin-Earth Day Master is generally very caring, very nurturing, wanting to help people. And obviously, later in life, he's going to get some good status and recognition. Why? Because Yin-Earth Day Master is combining with Yang Wood. When those power element combinations coming in the chart is really auspicious to give us the public recognition and success. He's also got another thing, what they call a 3 mystical configuration, right? But this is a different one. This is what they call the reverse 3 mystics, the yin earth, the yin water, and the yin wood. The reason it's called the reverse is because the elements that combine with yin wood is yang metal combines with yin wood, yang earth combines with yin water, and yang wood combines with yin earth. So this combination, the yang wood, yang earth, and yang metal, are 3 mystical configurations for someone who's going to become famous. He's got the reverse of this, so it's the same thing. So that gives him the recognition out into the world, which he achieved. Obviously, he's incredibly well known throughout the world. Now, there's another very interesting thing in Jung's chart. And they talk about Tai Chi nobleman stars. Jung has got 3. 1, 2, 3. The Tai Chi nobleman stars, right, are stars that give you fate and karma to do with Chinese metaphysics, funnily enough. And I know he's done one of his very good friends, Richard Wilhelm, who I think he wrote the foreword to the classic one of the first translations, I think, into English of the I Ching. So Jung obviously translated that. And when you look at, when you've read the works of collected works of Jung, he's done, obviously, understands astrology and is right into the divination arts, such as the I Ching. And it makes sense from his chart, right, where he will get that kind of interest, very strong interest in it. So that's basically his Bazi chart in a nutshell, which I found fascinating. So very capable man, very interesting man. Definitely a very strong mystical side to him. I would class him as a mystic. Deeply yin earth types, deeply rooted in nature, strong appreciation for nature. Yin earth can be quite intellectual and have a tendency to overthink things, but from a Chinese astrological point of view. But yeah, definitely very grounded, because we've got to remember earth element in Chinese astro is ruled by the planet Saturn. So, in Chinese medicine, the yellow emperor is classic, right? The color of earth is yellow. What they're actually really talking about in that medical classic, actually, in my opinion, is the planet Saturn. So it's just a bit of a take on Jung's Bazi 4 pillars chart. Obviously, this is a cycle he's in, but he's not alive, so it's 146. But yeah, very interesting, and his chart is extremely interesting too. And look, I mean, an Aquarian midheaven, right? So, ascendant at 4 degrees, a Cancerian degree. So there's a flavor of him that's extremely innovative, but also, I would say, extremely caring and compassionate. And he's got quite a little bit of Cancerian energy in the 6th house, right? The moon rules that, with Mercury and Venus in there, wanting to have, communicating, caring type role. But one of the key things, obviously the lord of his chart is the planet Saturn. I tend to go more with the traditional rulers. And obviously one of the key things he coined, right, was the collective unconscious, which is what the 12th house represents. So the lord of his chart is playing out there. He's destined to go there. And I remember, I can't remember if it was in Memoirs, Dreams and Reflections, which I highly recommend people read that book. It's just amazing. And The Undiscovered Self. But, he coined the term the collective unconscious, which is what the 12th house represents, right? It's being able to tap into the records of the world, so to speak. And it's kind of more, has a Piscean subtone, so emerging with something greater than ourselves. And it can be an extremely compassionate house, spiritual house, this kind of thing, how they call it the house of hidden enemies, these kind of things. But all I personally think is the hidden enemies are our own unconscious or unheard, archetypes within ourselves that need to be expressed. So you can see how he termed these terms, the archetype and all these kind of things, and having his whole destiny playing out through this house. And I think he did end up, I can't remember if this is true, someone can write in the comments if it is, he ended up in a mental institution at some point. But yeah, extremely, driven with an Aryan midheaven. Sorry, a Sag midheaven, but also an Aryan degree with Jupiter ruling that in the 9th house. So he probably wants to bring out this wisdom. The ninth house is all the house of higher learning, open knowledge, but philosophy, things like this. Really wanted to bring that out into the public eye. But then, of course, having the moon, the lunar principle here, and there's an interesting midpoint going on here between Pluto and the midheaven, in connection with the planet Pluto, the moon in the midheaven and Pluto. And this, to me, it's fascinating. Actually, I was just reading a translation. I think it's in Reinhold Urbiton's book on stellar influences, a combination of this, which can indicate a peculiar soul life. And this is so, if you've read his works, particularly Memoirs, Dreams and Reflections, it's just mind-blowing actually what this guy's actually gone through in terms of his own inner life, and being able to communicate that and bring this out into the world. It's just phenomenal. Anyway, I just wanted to briefly touch on these aspects in his Barter and Planetary Astrology chart, and I highly recommend people to really do their own digging into the psyches. There's so many good books and things to read that can really help us navigate our terrain, particularly when we're in the abyss, right? And we're all going to go there. Most people I try and bring aware. Funnily enough, when a lot of people, not always, but majority of the time when people book an astrological chart reading, I've noticed with me, is most of them are going through the balsamic lunar phase, which is like the Pink Floyd album, The Dark Side of the Moon. And it can be an extremely difficult period for some people. But anyway, any questions, comments, please comment below, and jump in on the live Friday, and I'll finish off those Chinese astro charts for people, and we'll get into a little bit of Valentine's love with the peach blossom stars and romance flowers, things like this from a Chinese astrological point of view. And stay tuned for more videos coming your way. Thanks, guys.